Hello and welcome to a video with me, Raindale. Seeing the success of the to-be build videos that I released yesterday, I want to do another one with 9S. Also, there's a couple people who asked for it, so why not deliver? So I do want to say though, I haven't tried 9S that much myself. Mine is only at 79, so we're still mainly in the theory crafting department. These are things that I haven't had chance to test in game a lot. So if you have comments or if you tried yourself, please let me know how it goes. I really want to know. But let's dive into it. And the first thing is about 9S's weapon. Now, he has access to a weapon which provides lightning damage up. I'm going to recommend this for every scenario if you want 9S to use damage. There are two reasons for that. The first one is Cruel Arrogance provides lightning attack up, which means it will affect all his damage types. That means, yes, his piercing attacks will be influenced by that, but also Hacking, which is a typeless attack, and his best ability, I think, will be increased by Cruel Arrogance. And also, if you're specking him in the Nightblade or Viking subjob, all his slashing attacks will also benefit from that, so it's very important. The only scenario where I would run perhaps the Wind Spear, if you have it, is if you're planning to use him as a pure support and he will never attack in your build. You just want him to use his TP abilities. In this scenario, the Wind Spear provides him with a little bit more agility, so that might make it worth it. But honestly, not my recommendation. Cruel Arrogance should be there in almost every time, and then I recommend the Assault version because you have a higher overall attack, and also I don't like basing my damage on crits because there's a random chance to it, and when I'm making a plan during a battle, I want to know how much damage I'm going to do ahead of time. Every factor of variance is a weakness in my perception, so Assault it is, for me at the very least. Let's go and take a look at the first build, and that's what I would run against physical teams only. Now my next build is going to be against mixed teams, but if you have the chance to pick an enemy that doesn't use any kind of magic user, this is a pretty good way to go. And before we go into the build details, I want to say I am using the Astrologer card for 9S throughout this video. There are two reasons for that. The first is, I think if you have this card, you really want to run it for him. It provides him with resistance to single target attacks. It provides your entire team with attack and acquired AP up, which are great party abilities. And then most of all, it gives 9S a new attack pattern that's a very wide AoE that also decreases defense for all your enemies. And 9S is more of a support character. He will not be your primary damage dealer in a team, so having an ability like this that enables every other one of your attackers in a wide AoE is a great tool to give him. And I think you're going to want to compromise on some other cards, perhaps on your other party members, but if you want to get the most out of him, this vision card is a great one. I will be mentioning other options though as we look at other builds. So with this physical Bruiser build, similar to what we were doing yesterday, we're using Golem for extra defense, we're using the piece of armor that gives the highest amount of defense we can take, and then we benefit from 9S's natural very high defense. So that means he's going to be very tough to defeat with enemies that have no defense penetration because they'll just keep hitting him and do negligible damage. So that's very strong. Obviously, you want to avoid enemies with high defense penetration, so that's mainly snipers, double gunners, and I think that's most of them. Titus is also one, but since you also have water resistance, he might not be that big a deal for you. And I think if you want to build 9S to fight enemy Tituses, this is one of the best ways to go at it, because you have very high resistance against him and most of his teammates, so that would be a pretty good plan. What this build suffers from though is a lower agility, only 77, which isn't great overall in the game, and also a magic weakness, so you only have 15 spirit unless you're buffing it. with the shield deployment buff, and you also have minus 10% against magic attacks. So they might one-shot you if it's a maxed out Yuna with Bahamut, but more realistically, it will probably take 2 hits to take you out. And then in all my builds, I recommend using 9S as a Nightblade. The reason for that is it's just very fun overall. And I can see a lot of use for double resist, which if you're fighting missile or pierce enemies is going to be a great tool. But also the fact that you gain another damage type that is slashing, which you can leverage against some opponents, is great. And most of all, Drain Rush is an ability that allows you to heal back up. That is great. And then build lightning chains and slashing chains, which fit well with other party members. But really, when you have a high defense and enemies hit you for 1000 at a time, having the ability to heal back up is really good because it takes them a long time to deal the amount of damage you're healing back. So I think that's a great tool to have. So let's just quickly do a little look at how we get to 57 to 72 points of defense. So first of all, Guild Statue provides you with 2 if it's level 5. Then 9S as a base with his master ability and job nodes has 22 defense, which is very high. It's kind of impressive. Then with a Plat Robe, for example, he gets 18 more, Golem gives 15. And I got a couple comments about Golem and Titan giving percentages increases to defense and spirit. That is not true. If you try it out in game, you'll see that Golem gives 15 flat defense and Titan provides 15 flat spirit. I do know that the nodes has a percentage next to it. Don't ask me why it's there. It is not accurate. It is flat defense and flat spirit. And then if 9S uses his shield deployment buff, he gets even more defense for a couple turns. So that can give him not physical immunity, but pretty close to it. So overall, very good against physical attackers. Now, what if your enemy has also magic attacks? Or if you're prepping 9S for blind builds, which means you're going into guild battles or class matches with him, and you don't know what you're going to be fighting, you can't just have high defense and sacrifice other stats. So in this case, we're going to swap around a couple things so that he's resistant to a wider variety of attacks. With this build, we're swapping out Titan in favor, Golem in favor of Titan. So we're getting 15 less defense, but 15 more spirit, which means magic is a little bit less of a threat. And then we are swapping out our piece of armor for Tidus's necklace or any other piece of gear that provides a high amount of spirit. If you're doing this, I recommend taking bells on 9S. Or another piece of equipment that will give you defense and agility. So anything else that you think of. I don't have anything coming on the top of my head. But with this, you still have pretty decent defense while having a lot more spirit. Again, in this build, you want 9S to use shield deployment because it is what will make him hard to kill. 32 defense isn't that great, 47 pretty good, right? So the difference is really important here. And with this build, he also has a pretty decent offense. Titan provides him with Pierce attack up, so most of his abilities will still hurt pretty hard. Like, we're still in the 1000 attack department, so we're not sacrificing too much. Compared to the other build we were running though, we have lower HP, and then obviously less physical bulk since we're sacrificing some of that defense. Another interesting way, I think, of building him could be going for resistance build. So 9S has pretty good init pierce resistance, and then he can get great missile resistance if you're using the unyielding protection passive. And I guess I didn't touch on that previously, but for the other two builds, we were using the Nightblade Mastery passive ability. Why? Extra accuracy, extra attack. That's overall what we want if we want him to have a little bit of reliable damage. And then Hacking Enhancement, I am going to keep that on no matter the build, because it changes the hacking ability to have more range, which is very important, but also gives it a chance of stunning the enemy. And stun resistance isn't really a thing right now, so no matter when 9S attacks somebody, he'll have a chance of just stunning the enemy team member. That is very, very good. So we'll keep hacking enhancement, but for this build, we are going to be running unyielding protection. So we're losing out on some accuracy, losing out on some attack, and then our overall defenses are a bit lower. But what we're getting instead is a super high amount of missile resistance, which is 60 pre-buffs, then 85 if you use something like double resist. And then if you were to run a vision card for missile resistance on another teammate, so for example Mask of Deceit, well, you can get 80 to 105 and then become temporarily immune to missile. So that could be a fun way to use him. Obviously, this is a very specialized build, so you have to know what you're going into. Again, if you want to build for guild battles, go for the overall build I was running earlier. And how do you get to that high of a missile resistance? Well, base of 5%, then the defense bracer would give you 25% for 3 turns. If you don't have those, you could run the plat robe for 10%. So overall, you'll have less, but still a okay overall missile resistance. Then Ifrit as an Esper gives you 15% missile res, the Unyielding Protection passive gives you some more, and then double resist. So that's where you get those high numbers. Then, I won't go into too much details here, but you can go for an anti-piercing build by swapping the missile resistance for piercing resistance. For that, you need the Elf Cloak and then Golem with pierce resistance. And I do want to say, those resistance builds are very strong against the enemies that are weak to them. But they require players with a very good equipments in their accounts, and players that have probably been playing the game for longer. That's the case for resistance in general. You need +5 gear generally to get those few extra points, and not everybody has access to them. So if you're looking for a more general use for 9S, go for the overall build I showed earlier. That might be better. But here you can get all the way to 55 pierce resistance pre-buff, 80 with double resist, and again, if you were running Leviathan on another teammate, well, that goes to 75 to immunity to piercing attacks. So he can really take those spear attacks very well if you're building him for that. Again, though, you will have some pretty high weakness to magic, so you'd have that to worry about. Okay, so we've seen the builds. Now, what about abilities on and off? My opinion of 9S is that he is not meant to be your team's primary damage dealer. He is meant to be a bulky side character that can provide great buffs to your team, and then when the combat starts, he will be debilitating the enemy team using abilities that provide debuffs or stuns them. That's really what he's there to do. So Linear Spear Shot and Linear Spear Shot Plus, for me, are not good abilities. Sure, they'll deal damage, but that's all they do. That's not what he's there for. I do want to say though, if you are running 9S with other spear users, then Linear Spear Shot Plus is a good ability because it decreases piercing resistance, so there is a case for it. And then, depending on who you're fighting, double resist should go off or on. So if you're not fighting enemies with missile or piercing attack, you don't need it. Turn it off. You won't use it. So that's the abilities on-off. The rest of his kit, I think, works really well, and they all have scenarios where they will be the best ability to use. And then the last thing to touch on is partners for him. So if you want to build 9S as a Bruiser, so as a character that's hard to kill, provides good supportive abilities, well, he doesn't have any way of gaining hate, so it doesn't matter how tanky he is if all your characters around him are all getting killed. So I think you need one of two scenarios. The first one is you need a team that lets 9S go in front so that he's the only target your opponents can reach. That would be the case for a missile team. especially with lightning missile attackers, since they'll have some synergy with 9S's mastery ability. So that would be Nivlu, Frederica, and possibly Alim, who I like a lot, and Pierce's defense. And 9S doesn't have much ways to deal with defense unless he has the Astrologer card. So a bunch of really cool options, I think. But another way to run it would be to make your team more bruisery and bring a healer. On screen, I've put Sissel for physical barrier and Yuna for the OP heals and magic damage that she brings. But you could do other variations with Ayaka. Any kind of healer and other bruiser characters would fit in this build. Because 9S will be one of the targets that are hard to kill, and your healer should stay behind, just keeping the front line alive. And then the last way I would probably run him is with other bruisers that don't need healer. And in these team comps, you'll want to fight physical teams, and then you'll just live through their initial attacks until you get in their face and then kill them. And you should pair 9S with Raldor, with Mond, with Engelberts, just characters in general that are hard to kill and hit very hard in return, and characters that would benefit from extra defense and spirit that 9S can bring them. So I think those would be the teams that I would see for him right now. Obviously, if you have any suggestions, let me know. I'm really eager to see him in game, as I said. So that's it, guys. I tried to make this one a little bit shorter and more to the point, but if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I love answering them, and it also helps me with my reasoning and how to improve on those videos. So thank you so much for your time. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. It will make it more likely that you see my content in the future. And then thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.